Yes, well, he's a talented player, if not the best in the AFL, certainly the top bracket. Well done, Koutoufides, for his first touch in AFL football.
Great run down, a good tackle, McDermott. On play, Koutoufides, he's a goal. Well done, young fella.
Point deficit now as Carr, McManus. Good tackling and pressure by the Blues, and Koutoufides away. Graceful, is it Koutoufides? Has he got the finish? You bet!
Silvani back towards half. Oh, Koutoufides! Is there anything else this bloke can't do today?
Margin 11 points. Kicked by Murphy. Brown waits at the back. And waits. Doesn't have to. Koutoufides!
What a match winner he is. Can he do the unbelievable and pull a final out of the bag for the Bluebaggers?
Haven't had too much of that in finals this year. Koutoufides gets it.
Hello viewers and welcome back to the Benchwarmers. Today joined with us is Anthony Koutoufides, who is a Carlton Football Club legend. He's a two-time All-Australian, premiership player, an AFL Hall of Famer, a two-time best and fairest, and was the captain throughout 2004 and 2006 for the Carlton Blues. Anthony Koutoufides, mate, welcome.
Thanks, Marwan. Good to be on here. Thank you, boys.
No worries. I'll just start it off with a quick question for you. So you sort of revolutionised the game of footy as being sort of the first real utility and the first sort of big man to go through the midfield. Was this something that you always were sort of through your junior career, or was it something that just sort of you were just called up to do it at an AFL level?
Yeah, no, it just evolved that way, Marwan. In all honesty, as a junior, I played in the ruck, and because I did, athletics, and I got to become Australian champion high jumper. I could jump, and so even at my height at 6'3", I was in the ruck. Even under 15s in the Victorian team, I was rucking against guys that were 2 metres tall. But I played basically ruck and then centre half forward for my local clubs. But then in terms of under 15s, when I played in the Carlton Junior Development Squad, they played me a full back. So it was an unusual position that I was at. But being athletic, I just did what I had to do and learned it. So as I got to become a senior player, all of a sudden they were playing me everywhere. And I think being maybe the first athlete to come into the game, the coach was probably a little bit unsure of where to play me also, because I could run and jump and get the ball off the ground and, take a mark. And so I could do it basically all, but it was hard for them to go, I think his best position's in the midfield. So I had to wait a long time before I got to play in the midfield. And, I remember 1992 in the reserves, I was playing a fullback there as well. And then, centre back, half forward, back. I played every position, including ruck and seniors. So can you imagine me, metre 90, metre 91 tall, rucking against these guys that were 2 metres tall? I had to jump this like over their head, but even then their arms were even longer. So it was good fun. I enjoyed it anyway.
So you won your first and only premiership in 1995 against the Cats. How did the day go? How did the lead up go? And what did it mean to you?
It was a great day of my life, Josh. In all honesty, 22 years of age. I was from the northern suburbs of Melbourne. I used to watch grand finals as a young kid. I almost felt like they were surreal. I never really went to many junior football games in terms of VFL or AFL back then, because Mum and Dad never really took us. And I went to a couple just through friends. So, that day was very special for me. And if I look back in 1994, I thought my career was almost over halfway through the year when I got dropped for a couple of games. But then it all changed after that. And so 1995 was a special year because we only lost 2 games for the entire year. And we went into the finals. Well, we went into the grand final not even as favourite, but even the first week of the final against Brisbane Bears back then they were. It was a close game, and we just won by, I think, only 14 points that game. And then we went on and thrashed North Melbourne and Geelong. Pretty much the game was over at halftime, although you never felt like, we were just going to walk over and win. But halfway through the last quarter, there I was standing on the MCG in front of 90,000 people and in front by 80-odd points. I stood there and I thought, I think I'm about to be a premiership player here. How good's this? So I'll never, ever forget that day. And, I thought I was going to win many more after that, but it was even more special because I got an opportunity to play in another one in 99 where we weren't quite ready against North Melbourne. And, injuries and everything, just got us in year 2000 and 2001 when we were still a great team. But that's the way it panned out.
Yeah, just on that 99 run, you played arguably the best quarter of football seen in the AFL or VFL history against, the heavily favoured Essendon Bombers in the prelim final. This saw you guys to get up by a point in the end. How did you manage to come up with this masterclass?
7 points. Kicked by Murphy. Brown waits at the back. And waits. Doesn't have to. Koutoufides!
What a match winner he is. Can he do the unbelievable and pull a final out of the bag for the Bluebaggers?
We haven't had too much of that in finals this year. Koutoufides gets it. They're trying to defend that against their arch rival. Ratton, standing start by Ratton. Won't quite make it. By the mark! Kouta again! Koutoufides has taken the last quarter by the scruff of the neck. In 10 minutes of football, he's had 3 marks and coming up for his 4th kick. Blues by 7 points.
Rioli inside 50. Oh, poor kick. Koutoufides has been wonderful. Alessio's loose. So too Blumfield. The kick is a shocker. And it's marked by Koutoufides. Oh, takes the hand pass.
Kick by Fletcher up towards half forward. By G. He has been sensational in the...
This is just an incredible comeback by the Carlton Football Club. They are into the grand final. Carlton is into the grand final. No, I didn't manage. It was a bit of a fluke, I think, boys. But I was playing in defence all day in the back pocket. But I felt like I was reading the ball well, and I was like, man, I just want to get out and play in the midfield. And the midfield was always my favourite position, but there was other team players in the team, unfortunately, that could only play midfield, so they weren't as versatile as me. And sometimes when you're versatile, you just got to play in positions that sort of help more so the team. You say you're playing for the team more so than yourself. But on that day there, we started incredibly well. And we, halftime walking in the change rooms thinking, geez, I could be in another grand final here. How lucky are we? But Essendon had beaten us twice throughout that year, once by 40-odd something points and the next time by 70-something points. So they were the favourites. And if I recall right, Essendon supporters, they were saying on the news, are waiting in line for grand final tickets because they thought it was going to be an easy game. And halftime we walked in convincingly in front. By 3/4 time, Essendon had kicked 7 goals, 7 in that third quarter and were in front of us. And there I was walking into the huddle at 3/4 time. Like I almost was like talking to the coaches through my head and just saying, please put me in the midfield, please put me in the midfield. But the call didn't come at 3/4 time. The call came early on in the last quarter, maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes in. Essendon may have kicked the first goal. And they must have thought, okay, we just got to get Kouta in the midfield. And they did. And I went a bit crazy because the first bounce of the ball, Murphy then got it in the half-forward flank. And I remember sprinting on the other side and in my head thinking, do not kick the ball, wait. And he must have seen me running and I sprinted as hard as I could. And I got there, marked the ball and kicked that goal. And that was the start of us starting to all fire up after that. And I was lucky I took that big, strong pack mark there. Also, not long after that, in front of the big pack and kicked another goal and it was on. And I know as Carlton supporters and I, they'll never ever forget that game. Apart from all the premierships, I'm sure that would probably go down as 95 or 99% of the people, maybe 100% of the people to say that that was their favourite game of all time. In particular, for those that were there on the day, they could not believe what happened at the end, what unfolded, that drama of that 1-point victory against the unbeatables Essendon. That stopped them from equaling us as, on 16 premierships at that stage. But they got it the next year anyway.
Just quickly, my parents were at that game and they said throughout that last quarter, all we could hear was 90-odd thousand people screaming your name. What was that like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I was so lucky. All of a sudden I started hearing the crowd start to chant Kouta in these particular games. I'm like, are they talking about me? Like, what's going on here? I mean, a year before that, I was almost thought it was the end of my career and it just quickly turned in a couple of weeks. And so to go out there, and I remember the grand final, and at the end when they said, number 43, Anthony Koutoufides, the whole crowd just boom, it was just Kouta. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget the game against West Coast in 96. I took 18 marks that day on the wing, and I took that last mark in front of, I think it was Fraser Gehrig or Jason Ball or whatever. West Coast had stopped them from winning that game when we won by 1 point. And that in Princes Park, and 25,000 people felt like 100,000 at the MCG. They went absolutely crazy. And that game, when they chanted Kouta after the game, was just an amazing feeling. There was a certain energy or buzz
going on around the ground, and I had so many of the Carlton supporters just waiting for me to walk out of those change rooms at the end, and I had mum and dad with me too. I was like, oh my God, I could be here another hour, an hour and a half just signing autographs. But very privileged, Josh, in all honesty, to hear your name chanted when I just a local boy, man, had that dream to play one, AFL game of footy, and there I was standing in the field. And even later on in my career, every time I went near the ball, the chant would just go, and whatever, and it was just unbelievable, man.
As you just touched on there, your Carlton team had a lot of successful runs in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. What was this like to be in such a successful team?
I was very lucky, Sonny. In all honesty, I was a mad Collingwood supporter. James, there you go. I know you'd be happy about that. But I walked into, at that stage, I used to cry every year, James, when Collingwood lost the grand final, in particular to Carlton. My brother was a Carlton supporter, right? And so there I was anyway. I lived in the Carlton zone in Thomastown, where I lived. Mum and Dad was the Carlton zone. So I had no choice at the age of 14. I was down at their junior development squad. I went out, played 2 years under 15s, played under 19s at Carlton. But then there I was, and they offered me a contract, a 3-year contract. So then I gave up my beloved athletics, which I had an incredible junior athletic career, having records and everything. But I had to give it away at some stage. It was one or the other. And so I chose football. I walked into the most incredible football club of power, maybe a little bit of arrogance, but success. And I walked into a place where guys had won multiple premierships. I think one even won 4. I think Wayne Johnson, but he just sort of retired at that year, but was doing a bit of pre-season. Imagine walking in and he had won 4 premierships. So it was a normal thing to walk in at Carlton and see everyone with premierships. And so I remember John Elliott, who I thought was the greatest president there of all time. He created a family environment. I loved John Elliott. I don't care what anyone says. I felt like at home there. And Big Jack, I remember him saying early on when I was there the first year, and I was so scared, I felt the pressure. He said, you won't be remembered here if you don't win a premiership. And so I understood the culture of the Carlton Football Club wasn't about the home and away victories. It was about winning premierships. And so I walked in with not just one incredible leader, as in Stephen Kernahan was our captain, but he was surrounded by maybe 14 or 15 or 16 other great leaders. So I was a bum, man. I was just a young kid, used to sleep in. Maybe there wasn't that one of those guys that trained too hard. I was a bit of a natural, and I had a lot of liabilities. But when I walked in there, I started to look around, and when I couldn't get a game in 91, I started to go, what are these guys doing that I'm not doing? And I looked and I said, okay, they're training a bit harder. They're doing a bit more over here, and they're working harder in the gym and all that. And I learned from some of the greatest players ever to come across, not only Carlton Football Club, but some of them AFL greats that will be remembered forever. So I was very lucky.
Kouta, just touching on your success in the 90s. Look, Carlton, obviously, in recent years haven't been too successful. I just wanted to ask you, now that they've sort of hit their straps a little bit and they're coming into a bit of form, what do you think, what are your current thoughts on them? Do you think that they can really make a push for finals in these last few games? And aside from this, I also want to know your current sort of view on the game overall in comparison to when you were playing.
Yeah, look, I think they've got an opportunity. They've got a great run home. I don't sit there and study the form guide, boys. Honestly, I'm not like one of those footy mad people anymore because I've just got too much on in my life. But we'll always love the game of footy. Always have, always will. I'll always miss playing the game of footy because it was my love and passion for a long time. So I get a feel that the boys may experience finals footy, and that would be unbelievable for them. They're sitting in that, that group. But I feel like they're just that little bit better than that group, and they should make finals, and I hope that they can. I think David Teague has coached them very, very well. The game of footy is not like what it used to be. I think growing up with, having migrant parents, we had 2 choices, football or cricket, and I fell in love with both. And I thought football was just a unique game. And when my relatives, because my mum being Italian, Dad was Greek, when my relatives came from Italy, in 1995, what a year. They watched us win every game. They were here for 6 weeks or whatever they were. They fell in love with the game too because it was so exciting that every second of the game you look around, there was something, whether there was a fight going on or a big tackle or someone taking a specky or someone kicking an unbelievable goal. That was AFL footy back then. It was exciting. It went quick. Nowadays, obviously it's a different game, and they're incredible athletes. I'm not going to say they're not good footballers or anything. They're incredible athletes, man, the way they run and the way they jump. It's a very unique game that they need so many attributes to them. They can't just have that long distance running or just speed or whatever. They need to have everything, and that's what they do, these guys. But the game is not as good, I don't believe, as what it was. And I could be, the 80s and 90s to me, you go back, and even my son, my oldest boy, Jamie, doesn't even like footy, but he'd watch an Anzac Day game from 1995 when it was packed down. You couldn't even get in. Like, this is the normal home and away game in 1995, and he actually watched a bit and said, Dad, if footy was like this nowadays, I would actually watch it. And I was like, what? And this was probably 7 years ago that he watched it. So the game had changed so much that even he loved the game of what it was to be able to watch in the 90s compared to what it is now. So, I feel sorry because I think it's such a unique game. And, growing up, man, seeing those posters on people's windows and that grand final day, it was a religion here. No matter if your parents migrated here from another country and came here, they still, I don't know if I shouldn't say all fell in love with the game. My parents did because we played, but they knew about the game and they had a team to support. My father, had a team that he supported in that as well, because that was what it was about. But I think the migrants nowadays wouldn't love the game of footy like I did having, parents that were born overseas. And I feel like it's just changed dramatically, but it's still a wonderful game of just supreme athletes.
Now you touched on it just before. Obviously, you played in a well-decorated era. Who would you consider to be the hardest opponent you had to play against?
I always say Matthew Richardson, and people go, what, Richo? Oh, yeah, because I played on some absolute superstars of the game, and, Wayne Carey and Buckley and Hurd and Rashudo and Voss and all these guys, and Chris Grants and, all these guys I played on. There was one guy, man, that I feared. It was Matthew Richardson. I played him twice in defence, and he was a machine. And we talk about athlete. I had speed and I could jump. This guy had endurance as well. There's something I may have just lacked a little bit, boys, was the endurance part. And he just ran me ragged. And, he was 6'5", man, that could run like the wind. And other opponents could stop him on his day. There's no doubt some sort of worked him out. I had that 2 times on him, man. But I felt like every time the ball was going to come in, I felt like he was going to get it every time. I never felt like that against any other player. And so I say Richo, to me, was the toughest opponent. I always think, I don't know how he didn't kick 100 goals. If that guy was a sharp shooter like a Brendan Favola, that guy would have kicked a lot of goals, because in terms of contested marking and stuff like that, he was a freak. And when I first came on the scene in 94 and he was playing off the side when I was in good form, I'm watching this young kid. He was running around like everywhere. He had just an endurance like an athlete, like an Olympian. And so he was a fantastic player, Richo. And so I always say he was my toughest opponent.
Yeah, that's really surprising you say that, actually. Yeah. Who was your favourite teammate over the course of your AFL career?
Now, boys, you obviously haven't done your research, but Andrew Christou, of course, man. There's a few rumours about Andrew and I floating around the late 90s. You boys wouldn't have heard, but anyway, they weren't true, right? So don't worry. Study them up, the form guide. Andrew's just a wonderful man. Andrew was playing junior football at the age of, 9, 10, 11. He was winning competition best and fairest, but his father, being of Greek background, said, you're not going to play anymore. So he stopped for a few years. Then his mates at the commission flats there started playing games. So he just went to play a friendly game. And our captain, the under-19s, Andrew Cavidan, was there also. And so the Carlton recruiter, I don't know why the recruiters ended up at that game and seen Ange. And they said to Andrew, mate, invite him down the under-19s and get him down. So I was 16 when I met him. He was 17. He was a year older than me. But by the end of 1990, the guy was playing senior footy. So this was probably 98, 99, something around that probably time. No, sorry, 80, 88, 89. So I think it was in 88. Then by 1990, he was playing senior footy at the end of the year. Phenomenal, man. Like a left footer. He was my height. He didn't look like it on the field, but he's pretty much my height, who played in the half-back, who was the fastest guy at the club with Mill Hanna. They were the 2 quickest guys at the club. Ange was one and had great endurance too. Ange Mill was at the back with me, no good. His endurance wasn't great either. But Ange had that left foot, and I tell you now, there was 2 kickers in our team that could just pinpoint those passes that opponents found it impossible to spoil the ball. One was Greg Williams, and the other one was Andrew Christou. And Ange looked for me all the time. He'd just give me a nod like this, and I'd go, and I'd run out there and then put the ball in this spot right here. I knew how to just position my body in that. It was just too hard to spoil, and I'd mark majority of the time. So Ange, to me, was my greatest mate at that football club. I'm still mates with him now, and so we basically grew up together. When he was playing senior footy and I wasn't, he was the reason why I worked even harder to get there, because I watched him play 93 in the grand final while I was emergency sitting in the grandstands there at the MCG. I didn't want that to happen again. So he was the reason why I pushed a little bit harder to try to make, turn myself into a senior player.
Yeah, we spoke to Justin Madden last week, and he mentioned that, you and Ange were very close, and that was a unique relationship.
But he was probably insinuating something else, Connor, but I'll tell you that weren't true anyway.
Got out a little bit.
You were known, as you mentioned before, as being very athletic, and you sort of had the potential to be an Olympian, sprinter and high jumper, but you chose to play AFL. Was this a hard decision in the end?
Very hard. It wasn't. I definitely wasn't a sprinter, man. I wasn't the quickest guy out there off the mark. I was, but I had I was Australian champion high jumper for a couple of years there. I think it was 3 years, and then Tim Forsyth came along who beat me. He jumped 2.16, 2.16 I jumped 2.8 at the age of 16, and he went on to become the second best junior high jumper in that. He won a silver medal. And then he went on to represent Australia at Olympic Games and won a bronze medal. He ended up jumping his best was 2.34, 2.36, so phenomenal high jumper. But I also won the Australian Championships with an Australian record in 110 metre hurdles just before I gave up the sport. So I was unbeatable. I pretty much won every time in decathlon, like a multi-event. So I was pretty much unbeatable in terms of that 10 events that we used to do. And so I had many state records and I had many Melbourne records. I've probably still got a couple around now. I had junior records and that are probably still floating around. So I had a great junior career and potentially maybe could have gone on to the Olympics and maybe 110 metre hurdles. I just picked it up only because I used to do the hurdles in decathlon. My older brother, Paul, was state hurdles champ, 110 metre hurdles. So I just competed. I raced him, I wanted to be my older brother like we all do. And I got there. And so I could have potentially been an Olympian, maybe representing Australia. But at the age of 17, the Carlton Football Club rang me up, invited me down. I brought mum and dad along, not that they could communicate because they really couldn't speak English. But that was the day I signed my 3-year contract with the Carlton Football Club and gave up my beloved athletics. I got invited to, back in the day was unbelievable. I got an American college invite to go there and have a scholarship to go and live in America. And my mother kept that letter and showed my oldest boy, Jamie, who was, would love to get into college just for basketball. My son, Jamie, just Googled it up and found out it was one of the, Division I sort of colleges over there in America. So would have, all that stuff. But I picked the right sport. I know I did because, football now I still get rewards for everything that I've done. People still recognise me. I don't know how or why. Because I've been out of the game 13 years. So I've been very lucky and still get asked to go and do talks, not so much this year because we're not moving from where we are. But footy's just been an absolute privilege for me, man. I got so much fun out of it and it was an unbelievable time that I had.
As most people know, you've kept really fit and in shape throughout your retirement. Just usually retired superstars, they like to celebrate their careers and stop training completely. What's driven you to keep staying fit, especially throughout this coronavirus period? Also, feel free to promote your brand, Koutoufides, as well. But just talk to us how, what's motivated you to keep fit throughout retirement.
I did a few calendars back in the day, boys, so I always wanted to make sure I look good, I didn't want him to look there and go, look at him now, look how fat he is. I don't know, like when I retired, boys, in all honesty, I always wanted to stay fit and healthy. I got really unwell in 2010. Like I had no energy. I remember sleeping at 11 hours a night sometimes and struggled to get out of bed. I'd get home from work, sleep on the couch. I stopped training for a little while. I was going to see doctors, allergy specialists. I was trying to find out what was wrong with me. I was eating organic food too and nothing helped. I jumped on a product called Herbalife that I do now. The products, I was a skeptic, man, and the products changed my life. And you can watch me on Instagram and all that. I show it quite often because I absolutely love the product. I don't say don't eat because I still eat and I still enjoy my food, boys. Still love my burgers and souvlaki's. Don't forget the suvos, man. The schnitzels and the pasta that I grew up with mum and the lasagna. I still eat that food. So I have that privilege. So I'm lucky. And so I started that business with Herbalife and it's healthy, active lifestyle. And so, I teach people how to get fit and healthy, man. And I absolutely love it. And so it's a passion of mine now because I know I've helped people. I think the biggest person I've helped lose was 45 kilos, but I know there's more. But I've helped like hundreds of people lose 20, 30 kilos, but feel good at the same time. And we do, of course, now online training. So this isolation part has been great for me in the sense that I've just been able to concentrate on my work and not, fly here, fly there to do footy talks and get myself busy with people going, let's catch up for coffees and all that. Like, never not waste time, but my time could be more effective like how it is now where I'm just concentrating on my work and things are building like crazy. We've got international coaches as well. Now we're recruiting into the team. It's been just a phenomenal way to do it, you know, working from home too. So that means I get to spend a lot of time with my family, you know, qualify for free vacations. It's all these incentives the company puts on as well. And the company's just done their biggest turnover ever. And the company's been around 40 years. So, boys, I'm very lucky because, you know, I found a passion and love for something in life again. I was lost, man. I was down in the dumps after my football career because when your football club that you walked in when you were 14 and left when you were 34, I thought they would have opened the doors for me and invited me back. I tried to get back in there and do it for nothing, and there was nothing. I don't know. They just didn't want me back there for whatever reason. And whatever ego I had, and I don't think I got much of an ego, but whatever ego was deflated certainly after that. And it hurt me because I love the club and I just wanted to give back as much as I could because I want the boys to experience what I experienced. That culture of that football club, of that power. You know what? I was envious of the Carlton Football Club, and then I ended up there because I barracked for Collingwood, and I know what it was like, man. It was just fun. It was a family environment. I looked forward to it. And John Alley said to me, mate, you run through that brick wall, I would have done it for him. You talked to me after that period when he left, man, it was a complete opposite of the way that I felt and all the other players. And the ones that came in from other clubs wouldn't understand what it was like before that, but we had a great environment. So it was hard for my ego to not, you know, for the club not to say, yeah, come back and help out in some sort of capacity. When you think of a guy like what you say, that almost reinvented the game in terms of, you know, bigger midfielders being versatile and how important they are to a team playing in every position. I felt like I had plenty to give back, but obviously, you know, they didn't feel that way. So I move on, and I'm very lucky and, you know, very passionate about what I do now. And I love the fact when people ring me and they're reaching out for help and I can go out and assist and help them as well. It makes my life more fulfilling now, and I get to spend time with my kids too. And being 47, to be able to train with my oldest boy, I can't do the stuff I used to, believe me. But, you know, it is good fun for me and keeps me motivated.
So just one last thing, which Justin Madden left with us. He mentioned that when you started at Carlton, he says that you desperately wanted a Carlton bomber jacket and the club didn't give you one. But he says that you did end up getting one and hinting that it was from him. Can you tell us more about this story?
Well, it is very true, Justin. When I signed my first contract with Ian Collins, it was a 3-year deal. It was $7,800, boys. It was $150 a week. I think it didn't even cover my petrol money, in all honesty, because I lived out in Thomastown and had to drive to the club 3 or 4 times a week. So it wasn't the best deal. And Mum was trying to explain, you know, trying to say, you've got to give my son more money, but Ian Collins didn't understand what she was saying. I was too scared to interpret for her. So I signed the contract for $7,800. So I said to Ian Collins, mate, please, because even like the Carlton tracksuit back then was like, I used to put on, was like, oh my God, I used to walk around my chest out going, mate, have a look at this Carlton Football Club boys, you know, just the tracksuit, man. They give me a free pair of runners. I'd kiss them and go, look how good these are, because I couldn't afford these things growing up. Mum and Dad, you know what I mean? They gave me everything as in terms of love, but they never had money, you know what I mean? And so for us, it was like, oh my God, anything for free was like, and so I said to Ian Collins, all right, I'll sign this contract, but please, can you just give me one of those Carlton bomber jackets? And they were like, that was heaven, you know what I mean? And I just, because it wasn't in writing, I kept waiting for it. And I don't know, I was too scared to ask, or whether I said to Collie, do you remember that? And he was like, nah. I was like, oh, okay, there goes my deal. You know, all I wanted was a bomber jacket, man. It might have cost the club $100 just to keep me happy. Then I think I told Justin Madden, he said, I've got 3 of them or whatever at home. He goes, mate, I'll bring you one. I said, oh. So he became my best friend after that, man. He was just what a wonderful man he was, Justin Madden. He was a character. He was like something that you just need at the football club. He was 2'6", and he was the prankster. So he would either prank people or he would get pranked himself. And guess who? Guilty by association, because I'm number 43 and he was 44. So they put water in his locker, or they did all sorts of things, you know, like smelly stuff, whatever. And all just, I copped it just as much as him, Mr. Innocent, on the side, just because they gave it to Justin. You know what I mean? Like they took his tyre one time and it was just fun, man. It was just so much fun being around that football club. It was never-ending laughs, and it was unbelievable, man.
No, definitely. Justin, I'm not talking about his brother. Justin was definitely such a great bloke. The boys did catch up with him last week. But, mate, that just about wraps up the episode. Once again, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, that was one of the game's greatest of all time. Anthony Koutoufides, mate, thank you for joining us once again.
Too kind, mate. Thanks, boys. Have a good one.
Thank
You
you.
too, mate. Take care.
Hong to Koutoufides. Look at the pace. Holds it with one hand. Oh, that is great to watch. And he kicks it straight to Williams.
Quite make it.
Schofield breaking away. He brings it to the half-forward line. Koutoufides back on the fly. That's a courageous and very, very good mark.